Rock and roll music is another phase of the changes that come over this passing scene.
The Northwest music and radio scene has always been important. We have exclusive, informal interviews with many of the foundation players in this story. Some made it big, some stayed in the garage, but they all had fun. Local neighborhood kids that were part of something big. I'm Gary Crow, and this is the history of Northwest rock and roll. Musician, songwriter, rock and roller, teen idol, and lover of life. He's been around the block a time or two through his journey upon planet Earth, or the Rainbow Planet as he refers to it. Let's take a look at his part in the history of Northwest rock and roll. Jim Valley.
First you hold your hand and I give you that way I smile. I wanna hug and kiss you, but baby got to wait a while. There was a Baptist church that from my grandparents on my dad's side that I loved that music, trombones, trumpets. No tambourines, but very close. Really up-spirited. It was the first time I really felt I really loved music. In the fourth grade, I took trumpet and wanted to be Harry James, Louis Armstrong. Played in a group we called the Moonlighters when I was in about 8th grade. And when I was in the 9th grade, we played at our junior high school, Jane Addams variety show, and they brought in a special act from Shoreline High School, which was a group called the Frantics. And that's the first time I saw rock and roll played. And my eyes sort of spun around like Mr. Toad and said, I think I want to do that. I was in a little blue satin vest and a little blue bow tie and playing the trumpet, sitting down like Glenn Miller, and they came out with their guitar and stand-up bass and worked with me, Annie, honky tonk, and it was just incredible. I mean, the audience loved it, and I went back, later. I said, well, do you guys need a trumpet player? Talk to me later, kid. I was in a choir, and then we had these 3 girls that wrote songs, all played the piano, 4 or 5 rock and roll chords. I used to go to the rehearsals and listen to them and how they put these songs together, and they showed me how to play these chords, and one of the girls became my girlfriend, and I wrote a song for her. Well, oh, Cassandra. And so my next door neighbor, who was going to high school, said, that's a great song. He said, I know a guy that got a set of drums for Christmas, and I know a guy that plays the saxophone great, and I know a guy that has a guitar in his house. He can't play it, but he has a guitar. And he went, that's great. So they brought him over, and we had our first rehearsal. The guitar player that wasn't a guitar player, he sort of beat on it, and we learned 3 songs, and it was so incredible playing music you didn't have to read. We played our first little job, which was an intermission at a junior high school sock hop in Lake City, and we played these 3 songs, and I realized we were missing something, so I went down and bought a guitar and an amplifier. So my first guitar was called a Dan Electro, and aqua blue. I think it was $115. You got a $40 amp, and it was cool. You could turn it up, learn how to play a couple strings, and down, 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 down. Learned how to play basically by myself, Dwayne Eddy records. You got a month free lessons if you bought a guitar in those days. Nope, I'm gonna go home and learn how to play like Elvis. And I probably would have amounted to maybe a different kind of guitar player. And within about 6 or 7 months, I opted to go for a Stratocaster, which in those days was around $230. My dad signed for it. I was on a $15 a month payment plan. I used to sleep with it. I mean, it was beautiful. And then at one point we decided to go with Vince Valley and the Viceroys because that sort of sounded good together. And then after a while I didn't want my name associated with the group, so we dropped the Vince Valley. At one point early on there, that 1958, our family moved north of Seattle, Shoreline. And so that's where I found Al Berry, who became our piano player. And then I became the guitar player. And another guy that I met there said, "My mom will buy me an electric bass if you'll teach me how to play." So I said, "No problem." 4 strings on the bottom. And I think in May of that year, of my sophomore year in college, we had our first job that we played a 3-hour dance. $55 I think we got. So we would learn songs sometimes from the hit parade, a lot of R&B kind of things, but we'd learn songs that some of the other bands would play, like the Frantics or Dave Lewis Combo. For me in those days, it was always something that would maybe help work my way through college. I didn't consider myself enough of a musician that it would be that I would do it for my life. It was just something. It was fun. It was something. It was a spare job. The way we met girls, where we met other people at dances, and it was something. That's what we did on the weekend. So eventually, we would play Friday and Saturday night every weekend, all the way through high school, basically around Seattle. We played PTA dances, club dances. In those days, they had high school fraternities, high school sororities, social clubs, cool stuff. And so my social calendar, you'd meet people from all different schools. So that's how we got jobs. Well, Jimmy Valley has a band. They're $90. Spanish Castle and Parker's Ballroom were 2 dance halls from the 30s that were incredible, big, giant venues that all the bands would love to play at. You had to have a hit record, basically, to play there. The dance circuit included Target Ballroom, Linwood roller skating rink. All these places had these giant dances. Spanish Castle just happened to be between Seattle and Tacoma. And it seemed like there was a little bit rougher crowd there. Pat O'Day was one of the main disc jockeys, along with Dick Curtis. They were the ones that started the radio dances. First radio dance they had, I believe they hired the Wailers with Tall Cool One at the Spanish Castle. Pat O'Day, Dick Curtis. So they were heavyweights. They made each dance on the radio sound like it was the greatest dance in the history of the world. If you weren't there, you were going to miss it. Every dance sounded that way. I mean, if you could hear some of the old dance promos that they produced with Dick Curtis and Pat O'Day were just amazing.
Monday night, attention East Side, Lake Hills Roller Rink. The Viceroys return to Lake Hills. The Viceroys are finally back to Lake Hills Roller Rink. It's a Monday night dance you can't miss. This is Seattle's #1 all request station, KJR, request line number 421-9290. 8 o'clock tonight.
World's Fair. We got a job on an ocean liner that was moored in Seattle, and Channel 11 had their studios there, and they had a show called Deck Dance. So we were like the live band. It was the best gig in Seattle. It was, a half hour every afternoon. We played an hour. They filmed a half hour. And we met people like Nat King Cole, people come on that were going into the Seattle Center, or the World's Fair. And because of that, we played a song that Al had written, Al Berry, called Granny's Pad. And we got letters. We got lots of fan letters. Why don't you record that? So the band said, okay, Jim, you're the leader. See if you can get us a contract. So our contract was that we paid the record company $500. That took care of a recording session, mono. I don't even think it was 2-track. And 500 45s. And so we recorded this song. We never really thought it would get played. We thought it was sort of a cool song, but it had a sound. It didn't have a sound like a popular music sound, a Northwest sound as it became to be known. And in those days on the radio, there was a battle of the new sounds, some of these radio stations. So Granny's Pad got on one night, and it won, and it kept winning, and it won for, I think, days or a week, and they finally, Pat O'Day charted it. I think it got to number 3. And at that time, it was the largest selling local record in the Northwest. Granny's Pad was what kept the Viceroys in work for years. The turning point in my career with the Viceroys, we had an audition down in San Francisco at the Peppermint Tree. And Paul Revere and the Raiders set that audition up for us, or got the contact. And that job down there was just a whole different ball of wax. Would be like the Beatles going to Germany, to Hamburg. I mean, here was rock and roll down there, life between beatniks and hippies, right in between where that all started. And my world got turned around, changed around, sort of an inward path. And at that point I decided that the Viceroys weren't where I wanted to be. I wanted to be a little bit more out there and open, and maybe a little bit more funky, more 3-chord rock and roll. When I came back from San Francisco with the Viceroys, and I had decided I was going to move in a different direction, and that's when I saw Don and the Good Times for the first time at Parker's. And I was amazed at their energy, very solid beat. Fred was more of a intricate, you know, kind of moving around a lot, different things he's hitting, but Bob Holden was and made you want to dance, just, you know. Anyway, they came up to me and they said, well, we're looking for a guitar player that could sing. And I said, well, I'll keep my ears and eyes open for you. And that night going home, I couldn't sleep. You know, I was tossing and turning, and finally I went, I'm the guitar player that sings. So I called up Don Gallucci the next day and said, I found you a guitar player that sings. Who is it? And I said, it's me. You'd leave the Viceroys to join Don and the Good Times? I said, you bet. And I think we would be a really, you know, I said, you're a hot group already. I think what I could do with your lead singer, Don McKinney, I think we would be dynamite. And it was true. So I left the Viceroys. I thought I'd made the wrong choice. Joined Don and the Good Times. Within a month, we went in to record for Jerry Denon. They didn't have a song that I thought was hot. So I wrote a song one night called Little Sally Tease. We recorded it sort of like a Woolly Bully, Righteous Brothers answer back and forth between McKinney and myself. And it became a giant hit and established us as the, you know, we were like, I believe, the top rock and roll band in the Northwest. At that point, I felt that this group could be a national hit and would be my career. It really felt like a career rather than playing dances on the weekends. We got a manager at one point. We played Lloyd Thaxton. We played Hollywood a Go-Go. Anyway, we felt that we were on a roll.
From the Go capital of the world, Big Hollywood. Big Show on Hollywood. The Big Deal on Hollywood a Go-Go.
When we were down there recording in L.A., Revere called me up one day and asked me to join them. And we had a meeting, and I said, you know, I love this group. I think we're going to make it. You know, I'd like to come from a certain point and go all the way up into national recognition. He says, you know, that happens once, you know, in a blue moon. There's a lot of groups that are this far away from making it. Most of them never do. And he says, we have, you know, we're on Where the Action is, Columbia Records, you know, we're in fan magazines, you know, sound studios want to do a movie with us, and we'd like you to be part of that. So about a week later, he says, think it over. A week later, I talked to the group, talked to myself, talked to the trees, decided to go for it. And then, as it turned out, I came into LA, whatever day it was, and was picked up, taken to where they were filming Where the Action Is. Kicks had just come out. I stayed with Mark Lindsay. It was, we were roommates for a couple months. And it was exciting, just being with them. We were supposed to have a rehearsal for our first tour, and it kept being they were too busy. They were doing the dating game, and they were doing this or that. So at one point, I would get together with Fang, the bass player, Phil Vogt, and we'd sort of learn these steps and learn a few of the songs. And as it worked out, they were going to play they were going to Hawaii for 3 days, and they weren't going to take me because they didn't need me over there. But then, as it turned out, that would be the place where we would rehearse. So at the last minute, I get to go to Hawaii, which was exciting. We get there, they're still busy. We don't rehearse. We come back to LA. Our tour was a Dick Clark tour with Gary Lewis and the Playboys and whoever else. Starts in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We still don't rehearse. We get to this place. We have, I think it was 45 minutes before the show started. That would be our rehearsal. So I was full of, positive energy. I had no problem. I thought, no problem. So what happened was that we rehearsed these songs. They were fairly nervous about it. When we got out there for the performance, it was very smooth. I hung on these pipes that were in front of the stage for a solo for Louie Louie, and they said, "No problem, the guy's got it." So from then on, it was easy sailing.
Here they are, Paul Revere and the Raiders.
Paul Revere created an incredible feeling on stage that made everyone comfortable. Everyone could be themselves, and he was cracking jokes and doing funny things in back of the, where the audience wouldn't see. But we were just, we were like the Marx Brothers. And I think that because I, loved the music, that it came out, and when I was with them, they became the #1 group in the U.S. There were 3 things that took our time. One was Where the Action Is, which was early in the morning, 7:30 till like 1 or 2 in the afternoon. Then you go home and rest for a couple hours, and you go to Columbia Studios and record with Terry Melcher, which was also an incredible experience, because he had recorded the Byrds with Turn, Turn, Turn and Tambourine Man, and was really responsible for the Raiders' sound. And then there was touring, which took a lot of time. And then there was fan magazines, and that took a lot of time. I mean, you'd be on these photo shoots and interviews, seemed like 2 or 3 times a week. Mainly we toured with bus tours, but we'd have a bus with bunks on it. We'd fly to different places. We basically played a half hour, sometimes 45 minutes, mostly a half hour at the end of a show. The concerts had 5, 6, 7 acts on them. So it was a piece of cake. I mean, compared to Don the Good Times, where you were driving for hours and you played a 3-hour dance, it was really being like royalty. And the way you were treated by disc jockeys and other folks in the industry. In the Raiders, with the dream coming true of being like a rock and roll star in a top group, I think when one dream comes through, then another dream replaces it. So I was meeting people in that year, 66, 67, Jackson Browne, some of the Mamas and Papas, different people that are really singing with their heart, writing sort of more melodic, beautiful, magical kind of songs. And then the Beatles are bringing everyone through a lot of different steps. I was seeing and hearing music songwriters that kind of turned my crank as a songwriter. I was supposed to have some songs on some of the Raiders recordings, And as it turned out, I didn't, so that was sort of like a turning point. Also, I had the feeling or a dream of doing sort of like fairy tales for kids, songs that wouldn't have necessarily an evil element, but would help kids feel good about themselves, which later evolved into the work I do called Rainbow Planet, helping kids with friendship and social skills and so on. But anyway, with Paul Revere and the Raiders, it got to be a point where it felt like we were in one place, and I wanted to move on. It came time for me to leave that group.
We all ride the same spaceship. We all ride the same spaceship, traveling through our universe. We all share the same sunshine. We can live together, just a matter of time. We can learn to get along, just as easy as to sing this song. Come on, people, just you wait and see. We can learn to live peacefully. Peacefully. We all love to rock and roll. Rock and roll.
Don't you know that I'm yearning, yearning? Now don't you know that I'm yearning, yearning? Don't you know I'm wanting you? Now have you heard my life is turning, turning, full circle back to you? Now don't you know that I've been lonely, lonely, just dreaming of a night with you? I need you for my one and only, only. No one else will ever do. Open wide, open wide, heaven's gate. Open wide, angels calling now. Don't delay. Open wide, angels calling now. Open wide, heaven's gate. Open wide, angels calling now. Don't delay.
This has been just one chapter in our History of Northwest Rock and Roll series. Join us for more great stories as we continue our look at the history of Northwest rock and roll.
Was it ever like this?